On today's installment of the John Campea Show podcast, the Actors Union is actively getting ready to strike. Tom Cruise is saying that he's going to do Mission Impossible films right into his 80s. The Flash has just hit a major milestone. They made $100 million and it took them 3 weeks to do it. We'll discuss that a little bit. Also, can DC and Warner Brothers actually afford to make the new James Gunn DC cinematic universe? That's a question a lot of people have. Also, Mario Brothers is now coming to streaming on Peacock in August. We'll talk about all that and a whole bunch more. The John Campea Show podcast starts right now. Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here in our quaint little studio, brought to you in part by our friends at Mint Mobile. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world: movies, movie news, TV, streaming, all sorts of good stuff. Not just giving you our opinions, but giving you information and context so you can form your own well-informed opinions, whether they're the same or completely different from ours. Joining me in studio today, over here, we got Ray Ora.
Turtle power, baby.
Jonathan Voico right beside him.
Hey.
Chris Carr is back in studio today.
Hey, guys.
And most importantly, you guys are here. Thank you so much for being here and making this show part of your day. Here's how the show's going to go. We're going to spend the first part of the show talking about those topics I already listed off. Then in the last part of the show, we're going to take questions from our YouTube channel members. Every day we put up a post in our community tab on our YouTube channel asking our channel members to submit topics and questions, and we'll get to as many of those as we can in the last part of the show. All right, guys. That all down, let's get into it here, shall we? As you guys know, there has been a writer's strike going on in the industry. What is it, 2 months now? Couple of months. This strike has been going on. And as far as I know, the two sides still aren't even talking to each other. Now, in the midst of all that, the Directors Guild of America negotiated with and came to an agreement with the studios and producers, so there's not going to be a director's strike. But the actors, their contract is now officially expired. It expired on June 30th. But since they felt they were making progress in their negotiations, both the studios and the Actors Union, SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, agreed to extend the deadline from June 30th to July 12th, which I believe is next Wednesday.
Yes.
And they would keep negotiating in good faith, try to get a deal done. Now, some people, like myself, feel pretty optimistic that there's going to be a deal. You know, Union President Fran Drescher was sounded optimistic, saying they thought they were making good progress. The fact that both sides agreed to extend the deadline because they felt like maybe they can get a deal done. So some people like me think a deal is going to get done. But not everybody shares that optimistic appraisal of the situation. Because according to Deadline now, the union is getting ready to strike. This is written in Deadline. Deadline hears that actors are working on picket signs and ordering t-shirts and putting together a list of lot captains and coordinators. The WGA captains and coordinators have been the logistical backbone of the writer strike, now on its 65th day, organizing each day's actions outside of studios across Los Angeles and New York City. So it goes on to talk about other things. There are some people in this union that do not feel that a deal is close. Of course, even after Fran Drescher made the comments that they thought they were making good progress, a bunch of very high-profile actors, like really high-profile actors, including Meryl Streep and others, wrote a letter to the negotiating team basically saying, listen, we're ready to strike. Don't make any agreement that doesn't get us what we demand. And that has caused some, maybe a little bit of skepticism about whether or not a deal can get done here. Now, as of right now, the deadline is still June 12th, but the plan is, as of Thursday morning, June 13th, actors will be striking unless a deal gets reached. Now, Chris, as many of you guys know, you are a member of the Screen Actors Guild. You've been following this obviously very closely with a lot of great attention. We've seen a lot of developments now. We're hearing about this. Have you been in contact with any fellow SAG members about preparations for strikes? How do you feel right now the negotiations are going? And come Thursday, the 13th, is there going to be actors walking picket lines, Or is there going to be a new deal struck? What do you think?
I have a group chat with a bunch of actors called the Character Actors that is all about the pending strikes. And we definitely think we are going to. The most recent kind of surveys and everything do not bolster a lot of confidence when you're already preemptively asking people if they're available for the strike, because that's a big thing, right? For a strike to really work, you have to have people present there. You have to have people actively striking so that the public can see it. Those ordinances went up in Burbank around Warner Brothers and Disney because of people honking and everything in support of the strike. So you need bodies out there. And we already had a survey go out asking if people were available, if they would want to become strike leaders, chant leaders, do photography, videos, do phone banking. Phone banking is going to be a really big thing because a lot of these strikes usually last till about 1 p.m. That's been an issue with the writer's strike for some people who have day jobs, getting out there to actually go and physically be on the picket line. So that's another thing that actors can do. And I think it's going to happen. I mean, Fran Drescher signed the letter to herself, which
someone's going to have to explain that to me. How does Fran Drescher sign a letter that's addressed to herself? That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
Right? It makes no sense to me. Was solidarity with the union. Okay, but they're writing it to you. Interesting. All right. But I do think we are looking at a strike. And it's wild to hear because we have not gone on strike since the 1980s. I believe it was 1980 was our last one, and it lasted for 94 days. Whoa. I could be incorrect on that, though. We actors love to work. Actors absolutely like to work, just like how writers love to work. It is such an honor and privilege to get to do this kind of work, and it is hard, and it is very difficult to come by. And most people who are in SAG-AFTRA are not what's considered a working actor, right? Somebody who can support themselves with this industry. I believe the statistic is about 2% of us actually make all of our money from union gigs. Most of us have day jobs and everything. It's a really, really tough industry. And for us to choose to not accept a certain type of work, right? Because this doesn't exclude commercials, video games, those things that are outside the purview of the AMPTP. It's a big deal. And it's because, for lack of a more graceful term, we're getting screwed over, truly. Just like the writers. The way that residuals are working, the lack of transparency, it is mind-numbingly stupid that an industry that brings in so much money can't afford to pay the people who work on it. And you see this across all the different unions. I'm not saying it's just actors who are getting, dinged. Obviously, members of IATSE, people in post-production, et cetera, get really screwed over as well. But I think if we need to and want to see a change, this is what's going to have to happen.
Why has there been such optimism, though? Like going again, Fran Drescher with that video message sounded so overwhelmingly positive. The fact that the two sides in good faith extended the deadline, I mean, that made it all look like there was real momentum happening. But that's not the case. I mean, like, what's kind of soured that, do you think, in the last few days?
I can only speak for myself personally and the other actors I've spoken to, where that felt, and I talked about this on the podcast with you too, it felt like a weird PR move. It felt very scripted and stilted and odd. And I know when I saw that versus when I read the statement, I went, oh, there's something about that. This just makes me feel weird. You couldn't just quite put your finger on it, but there was something about it that just felt a little disingenuous, honestly. And it felt very, hey, don't worry, we're getting this discussion going. Don't you fret, little actors. Everything's going fine.
Felt like a little salesman-ish.
Exactly. Especially because right now it's union solidarity is the most important. Let's not worry about elections and things like that. That's my own little tinfoil hat kind of theory there going on. But it did feel like a little sweep under the rug. Don't worry, we've got this kind of moment. Fran signing the letter added another level of panic to how I was feeling. It just felt... It felt very disingenuous, especially after that Good Morning America appearance of we're getting some things that we want, we're not getting some things. Some things are going well, some things are not. Cool, you could say that about any discussion ever.
Yeah.
It didn't bolster a lot of confidence in me personally. And again, other members might feel very differently, but didn't feel great.
All right, guys, it looks like it might get messier before it gets better. Okay, with that down, let's move on to this, shall we? One of the biggest hit movies the last couple of years is obviously Top Gun Maverick, like far exceeded everybody's expectations. I would suggest even Tom Cruise's. But now Tom Cruise has another big movie coming out next week with Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Previews have been great. Trailers have been great. There's a lot of excitement for it. I don't know that it'll be a billion-dollar film, but it's going to be a big film. It's going to be a big hit for them. And listen, Tom Cruise, he just celebrated a birthday, and it wasn't his 48th. It was his 61st birthday. Tom Cruise is 61 years old. And so, lest you think that means that his time playing Ethan Hunt is now going to start winding down, well, according to Tom Cruise, that ain't true. He was recently being interviewed, and he said this: Harrison Ford is a legend. I hope to still be going. I've got 20 years to catch up with him, Tom Cruise said via the Sydney Morning Herald. I hope to keep making Mission Impossible films until I am his age. For those of you not keeping count, Harrison Ford is in his 80s. So Tom Cruise, according to this headline here, in Deadline, Tom Cruise continues to want to make Mission Impossible movies into his 80s. Now, and we made a short video of this on our YouTube channel earlier today. By the way, for those of you listening on Apple or Spotify or any of the other podcast apps, we do have a YouTube channel where we put up short videos every day as well. But we did a video about this earlier. And one of the things I said was, before you guffaw at the notion of Tom Cruise saying he's going to stick around playing in Mission Impossible movies till he's 80 and thinking, well, that's ridiculous, a few things to keep in mind. Number one, the Harrison Ford thing. Harrison Ford is still playing Indiana Jones. I mean, he's done now, but into his 80s. Another thing I would say before you guffaw is that if you had said when Tom Cruise was 45 that Tom Cruise would still be making Mission Impossible films into his 60s, I'm sure a lot of people would have guffawed at that. But here we are. He's in his 60s, and he doesn't look like he's slowed down one bit, like at all. And the third thing before you guffaw is understanding how much money this franchise makes. Money is a great motivator. Man, money will get you up in the morning and get you on that 4-mile run you got to do, even though you're 62 years old. That'll do it. Money will motivate a studio to say, yep, Tom, we're still behind you making more Mission Impossibles. And the fourth thing I'll mention is that his role in the films can evolve over time. He can still be the main character and still do a couple of badass things, but also then be the mastermind in the chair with his team, or lots of different options that they have. All I'm saying is, don't dismiss out of hand when Tom Cruise says, I think I can play this role into my 80s. Now, Chris, a lot of this will obviously depend on how Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning does. I mean, if Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning comes out and pulls a Flash, well, Tom Cruise ain't playing Ethan Hunt into his 62nd year, let alone into his 80th. But you hear Tom Cruise saying this, say, listen, I want to be like Harrison Ford, his icon. I want to keep playing this until I'm in my 80s. Is that a ridiculous thing to say? Is it a perfectly reasonable thing to say? What do you make of it? Do you believe him?
It makes sense to me, honestly. Money can do a lot of things. It can also help keep you fit and young.
Yeah.
It really can. And when you have the best trainers that Hollywood can offer, you're going to have a little longevity. He's going to cool it on the stunts as he continues to age. Your knees can't take everything after a while. But he doesn't look 60, first of all. Let's just talk about that. Tom Cruise doesn't look his age.
No.
He doesn't act his
finally
age.
Doesn't look like he's in his late 30s anymore.
Exactly.
He turned,
Finally.
Yeah, that portrait of Dorian Gray up in his attic.
Yeah.
It's starting to waver.
Someone went to pull it out of the closet. He's like, something's happening.
Where up to like 5 years ago, he still looked like he was in his late 30s.
Absolutely.
And so finally starting to age a little bit.
Yeah, he's finally looking like a maybe 40-year-old man, something in there. So, I mean, he's already got the secret sauce in Hollywood of aging very, very well. If you look at the Mission Impossible movies starting at 1996, on average, they've come out, aside from these two Part 1 and 2 movies, the Dead Reckoning ones, about every 4 years or so, basically. So that's really only 5 more Mission Impossible movies in that amount of time. I could see that happening, especially if he becomes, to use kind of a James Bond analogy here, if he becomes more of an M, he starts being the person sending folks out on mission. He's got some young buck he's training. We do a kind of passing the torch situation, which I know is not usually your jam, but I think that's what would work here should Tom want to continue being in this franchise. And
I
for
don't
the
mind
franchise
them passing the torch as long as somebody, they don't
He
get
doesn't
another
become
character saying,
Ethan.
you are now Ethan Hunt.
Ethan Hunt.
Like, yeah,
that is
let
now
them do
your
that.
name. But I think that could work. So you just have him in more of a leadership position with a young mentee.
How do you think Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning is going to do? Because right now, like, there are a lot of people that are thinking this movie's going to make like $150 million opening weekend. Right now, the projections are saying 70 to 75, which I think is probably more in line with where it'll probably come out. But what do you think it's going to do opening weekend?
I have heard so much buzz about this movie. People are really excited about it. So I do think it's going to do well. I think it is going to at least meet, if not exceed, expectations.
All right, guys, with that down, let's move on to this little thing here, shall we? You know, The Flash has been a headline story for the last number of years for mostly all the wrong reasons. A little bit of good reasons, like when people first started seeing it. I love the movie. I'm not going to lie to you. I love the movie. I think the movie's great. I think Ezra Miller's got to go, but I think the movie is great. I think Andy Muschietti did a fantastic job making this movie. I've seen it a couple times. Liked it even more the second time I saw it. All good stuff. But it doesn't matter if I liked it, because to call this movie a failure is an understatement. As a matter of fact, they just hit a milestone nobody wants. The Flash, ladies and gentlemen, just crossed $100 million domestically, and it took them 3 weeks to do it. Congratulations to the Flash.
To be fair, if I made $100 million in 3 weeks, I'd be ecstatic.
Yes.
You as an individual will be doing great.
But then if I looked at how many millions I had to put into making that 100, I'd be like,
3 weeks for it to cross 100 million domestically. It still sits after 3 weeks in the box office at $247 million. If you had asked anybody a year ago, when The Flash with Michael Keaton was coming out and the sequel to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was coming out, that one would make nearly triple the other, you would think it would be The Flash that was making more money. No, that's not. As a matter of fact, some industry insiders are now saying that when it's all said and done, The Flash is going to have cost them a loss of about $200 million, which will make it one of the most catastrophic box office failures ever, particularly for DC in the comic book movies. And now the Shazam 2 made a lot less money, but Shazam 2 costs a lot less money to make too. So there's that in there. So they're saying like a $200 million loss. Now, I've been saying for a long time that while I totally understood why they moved forward with the movie with Ezra in it, because they had already shot the movie by the time Ezra did most of their controversial things, I've said for a long time, Ezra's done. Ezra's not going to be Flash again. And a lot of people would argue with me about that. Say, no, they're going to still let Ezra be Flash. They're still going to, what? I don't hear it anymore. Where is that again? No. This thing is so done. It's ridiculous. And again, we've talked about this a lot. It really makes me worry about moving forward. What's going to happen with Blue Beetle, the $1 billion beetle, as Ray refers to it as, and Aquaman 2, which I still think Aquaman 2 is going to make money, but it ain't going to be the $1 billion film the other one was. Just everybody's giving up on DC. Anyway, Chris, even in my worst estimations, I don't think I would have guessed it would take 3 weeks for the movie to cross 100 million domestically. I don't even think you believed that. But when you see these numbers, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I have been on the record saying I don't know if this movie will break even.
Well,
so,
I mean, but this is way beyond not breaking even.
In my wildest guesstimations, though, I kept saying I don't think this is going to do well.
Yeah.
But boy, howdy, is this abysmal.
Yeah.
This is really, really bad because I don't know what Warner Brothers can do after this, honestly. And I know we're going to get into this, but they are in quite a financial sinkhole right now. And the next films they have lined up, I don't know if they're enough to pull them out of there, frankly. This is not good at all. And I am wondering, all right, all those people who were telling me, no, The Flash is going to do great, The Flash is going to do wonderful, where are you at?
I'm right here.
Yeah.
Where are you seeing this? You seeing this all the time?
It did
$1 billion beetle, baby.
It did wonderful for me. I liked it, baby.
Yeah, I mean,
But how many
money
times-
wise, yeah. Money
Yeah,
wise.
are you-
how
is this
people
a
are telling me
movie-
it was going to make $1 billion.
Yeah.
And we get I thought it was going to make money.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I never thought it was going to make, but there are a lot of people thought it was going to make like $1 billion film.
Yep.
But to be fair,
And it's good. It's a good
To
movie.
be fair, every movie that I've enjoyed, I probably told someone this movie's going to make $1 billion. I mean, it doesn't matter what it was. John Wick 4 is going to make $1 billion.
Bluey the movie, it's going to make $1 billion.
Bluey the movie would make him.
Yeah.
Like that
movie.
Bluey would blow up.
Yeah.
People love Bluey. Yeah, it's I just I'm blown away by how poorly this is done. And I say that as somebody who from the jump has gone, I don't really think this is going to be the success that other people are saying it is. But this is downright abysmal. It's shocking, honestly.
All right. With that down, guys, it segues into today's Mint Mobile hotline question of the day. Listen, guys, if you have a question for the show and you'd like to hear a voice either on our podcast or on one of our short videos on YouTube, call our Mint Mobile hotline anytime 24/7 at 951-268-4259. And I said this was a segue because the topic of today's Mint Mobile hotline question is about, at this point, can Warner Brothers even afford to make James Gunn's DCEU? Check it out.
Hi, John. My name is Anne Marie, a huge fan of your show. I'm calling in because I recently read an article about can Warner Brothers afford James Gunn's new DC? With movies flopping like Shazam 2 and The Flash, do you think Warner Brothers can afford a new DC? Let me know. Thank you so much. Bye.
All right. Thanks so much for calling that in. And listen, it's a fair question to ask. We were just talking in our last topic there about Flash, that it crossed the $100 million domestic mark, but it took them 3 weeks. Yeah. 3 weeks to do that. Whereas Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, this little animated film, made more than that on its opening weekend. So that's just kind of crazy. But the problem is a systemic problem. It goes well beyond just Flash. As a matter of fact, let's bring this up. When you look at all, going back to 2018, all the last numbers. Now, if you add Flash to this list, Flash is only sitting at $247 million. It's not going to cross $300 million. You've got the most successful DC film, Black Adam, making under $400 million worldwide at $393. Shazam in 2019 made $367. The Harley Quinn movie Birds of Prey in 2020 made $205 million. Wonder Woman 1984, there should be an asterisk here. There were extenuating circumstances, yes, but still made $169 million. James Gunn's Suicide Squad, again, asterisk with extenuating circumstances, but only managed to pull in $168 million. And the latest Shazam film, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, in grand total worldwide of $133 million. This is the context. This is the inherited legacy that James Gunn and Peter Safran have with the DC brand. Now, a couple things need to remind everybody of. That despite the floppage of Flash and the floppage of Shazam 2, none of that had anything to do with Peter Safran and James Gunn. They had nothing to do with those movies. Those are inherited legacy movies that were already shot, already ready to go, all that kind of stuff. They have nothing to do. James Gunn's first movie and Peter Safran's first movie is Superman Legacy in 2025. That's the first thing. So if Blue Beetle does come out and does what Ray says it's going to do and be the billion-dollar Beetle, James Gunn and Peter Safran do not get credit for it. That's not their movie. This movie was made before they came in and joined the company. If Aquaman 2, exceeds expectations and joins the billion-dollar club as well, James Gunn and Peter Safran do not get credit for that because this was a movie that was already in the can. This is a movie that was shot, planned, financed, all that kind of stuff, long before they ever took over. So nor credit nor blame do James Gunn and Peter Safran get for what's been going on, but still, it does create the environment that they're in right now. James Gunn and Peter Safran, according to David Zaslav, has a 10-year plan with multiple high-profile big projects. And to pull that off needs money. It needs a lot of money. It needs Top Gun money.
Money.
It needs so much money.
It's going to need a shark from the Shark Tank.
That's right. I'm out. I can just see the guy looking at, yep, no, I'm looking at your history. You're making no sales. Nobody wants your movies. I'm out. That's all the sharks would pass on this. But again, look at these numbers. Everything is under 400 million. Three of them didn't even crack 200 million. Come on. This puts them in a bit of a bind. Now, Will this affect James Gunn and Peter Safran's ability to make a new DCU? No, it won't. It will affect Warner Brothers, but it won't affect them overall. And understand why. Number one, all these movies were made prior to Discovery taking over the company. This was money that was spent. This was money that was spent and out of the company's coffers and all that kind of stuff long before Discovery ever took it over. That's not to say that there's no impact. Of course there is, but it's mitigated. It's mitigated a bit. On top of all that, they've got a couple of years between now and when Superman Legacy is going to come out. But the third thing is this, and this is the most important. What was clear when David Zaslav was taking over Warner Brothers and all that was that DC is their number one priority. Something that it had never been under Warner Brothers before. DC was always kind of a, what do we do with this thing sort of thing. It never had its own umbrella. It never had its own division. It never had any of that kind of stuff. And in comes David Zaslav and says, DC is too important of a thing. It is our main priority. That means if there are sacrifices that need to be made, if there are cuts that need to be made, if there are things that were planned that will no longer go into production at Warner Brothers, it's not going to be taken from DC's division. It's going to be taken from the other divisions. And that's not fair, but David Zaslav, James Gunn and Peter Safran, they believe that financially speaking, this new era of DC starting in 2025, this is going to be the economic lungs of the company. That's what they believe. Whether they're right or wrong, we'll find out, but it is what they believe. And if you believe that that's the economic lungs of your company, you're prioritizing it. And that means if there are cuts to be made, if there are, things that need to get canceled, if there are things to be taken off the books, it's going to be taken off the books from other places. It's not going to be taken off the books from DC. Now, you might see James Gunn and Peter Safran pivot a little bit. They put out a lot of plans, but those plans were put out years in advance. They could pivot a little bit here and there, but overall, I don't see this impacting at least the first stage of James Gunn and Peter Safran's new DC. Chris, I mean, listen, to call the legacy of the DCEU, of course, the new DCU versus the old DCEU, to call the legacy of the DCEU a failure is fair. It has never lived up to its potential, with maybe the exception of Aquaman and maybe the first Wonder Woman. We can discuss quality. I like almost all their movies, but you can't argue with the results. Does their current predicament with Shazam making $133 million, with The Flash after weeks still not crossed $250 million, with the high profile letdown of Black Adam and Birds of Prey and all that kind of stuff, do you think this could put some strain on James Gunn and Peter Safran as they get in the ball rolling into getting their brand new DCU put together?
I do. I'm not as optimistic as you about this. I think, and we've talked about this before, definitely budgets are going to have to be really reeled in for them. They are going to have a nice, reasonable budget moving forward. And that's something all studios have to do, right? We've seen this time and time again. Guardians Volume 3 could have made so much more money if they had kept production costs lower, right? And I love that movie. I wouldn't change a thing about that movie. But you got to look at that bottom line. And these studios are really ballooning their budgets lately. And if they want to see a higher return, they've got to get that in check. Now, you were talking about how we are going to see the other departments see these cuts. We already have. And a lot of big Hollywood folks, Steven Spielberg, right, Scorsese, have already talked about how short-sighted these slashes have been, right? Dealing with the Turner Classic situation, gutting a lot of properties and selling them off to Netflix, selling off music rights and things like that. We've already seen these. And I know this was the old regime, but we also saw a short-sightedness when it came to things with the DCEU, a reactionary kind of approach to things. Now, it's hard to say because we haven't seen this new universe come into play yet, but with failure after failure, the streaming service is not doing as well as hoped. The studio is not having movies that land. The grace right now is coming from things like some of the content they have, The Last of Us and
House of
the Dragon, yeah. But other than that, Warner Brothers is not where it needs to be or should be or where we all assumed it would be. Warner Brothers has been associated with greatness. HBO was associated with greatness. Max, I don't know if we're going to associate with that much anymore. they really need to make some changes over there. And I do see this trickling over into DCU because Zaslav right now, we've talked about the acts of Zaslav, right? That's all we've seen is somebody slashing and hacking away at stuff. I have not seen things created.
But we said from the day it took over, we said it will take literally years to see what it is they're going to create.
And he gave an impressive presentation at CinemaCon.
Yeah, that was a very good
absolutely going to give
presentation,
him that. But I'm wondering if a lot of these cuts are going to be ones that they cannot heal from. Because it feels that way right now.
See, I don't know. I was having this discussion with a friend of mine about, like, for instance, the some of the HBO content going to Netflix. Personally, I saw that as a stroke of genius. I think it's great because it's taking these shows that are no longer relevant and nobody talks about, giving them new life and creating revenue for the company that they simply wasn't. And at some point, those licenses run out and they go back to being exclusively HBO. Disney's doing the same thing now. They just announced that I actually think it's a good move for older content that is no longer relevant. All of a sudden, because what's the main show? The main one that they not sold off, but they've licensed out to Netflix.
Disney Plus?
No.
Oh, the HBO stuff?
The HBO just
Westworld?
What's that?
I think they sold Westworld, didn't
Well,
they?
no, it's
because that's ended.
with the
it's just been
actress
removed.
was the lead. Fuck me, I can't remember the name of it now. Like it's a one-word title, but at any rate, nobody was watching it anymore. It won awards anyway, but nobody's talking about it anymore. The show ended. It's not in the limelight anymore. Now that show, like, it's Unimpressed, or I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you do. I don't.
No. I know which one. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, so all of a sudden it's in the headlines again. People are talking about the show again. It's going to get new life on Netflix, and it's generated money for Warner Brothers. Here's the thing. I generally believe overall that all of Hollywood needs to, like, reel in how much they're spending on these movies. I mean, it's just spiraled out of control. But there's still a reasonable amount of money you can spend on big blockbusters. And I simply don't think that the new DCU is where you exercise restraint. I think now, not that they should be spending $300 million a movie, not at all. And they won't. But, like, that is they need this thing because it's not just about DC helping their 2025 year and their 2026 year. They're looking at maybe this DC division being the economic lungs for Warner Brothers going into 2030, 2035. And for that to happen, you got to get off to a good start. And I think they're not going to sacrifice. I mean, you made some really, really valid points. I just still think, though, at the end of the day, they're going to say, we're going to succeed or fail based on whether this DC division of ours succeeds or fails. Therefore, we got to make sure it does.
Is it Warner Brothers that's thinking about selling their portion of Hulu to Disney? Or was that Universal? I can't remember.
No, that's Comcast.
Oh, it's Comcast.
Comcast
okay.
and Disney are the two remaining. Disney owns 66%, Comcast owns 33%.
And I was thinking, Warner Brothers has a big payday on the line coming up, but that's
that's
Universal.
Comcast. Yeah. And they are going to get a big payday out of that.
Insecure.
Insecure.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
a race show.
What did I say? Unimpressed? I think
Unimpressed.
unimpressed. Whatever it is.
Well, now you're making her insecure. You're unimpressed.
There you
Again,
go.
Insecure was a hit show.
Critically acclaimed, yeah.
Got critically acclaimed. And then once it finished, nobody's talked about it anymore. And nobody watches it on the network. Now it's in the headlines again, and it's making money for Warner Brothers. And then eventually, they're going to get it back again. So I kind of like that move. And I think you're going to see, like we said, Disney's already doing it. I think we're going to see others start to do that as well. At any rate, it's just going to be interesting to see how bad this is, because, I mean, part of it is when they took over, they knew the failures of like Birds of Prey and Wonder Woman, and they saw what happened to Suicide Squad, and they had to have known to a degree that, listen, it's going to be a bit of a struggle with. I mean, I'm sure they were hoping Black Adam was going to be a bigger hit than it was. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they were hoping.
Definitely hoping we're Flash.
That Flash was going to be much bigger.
The greatest comic book movie ever made, according to David Zaslav.
I think they looked at Black Adam as like that was their last big swing. If this DCEU was going to continue, that was their last big swing for The Rock to then take it on. But that was it.
Yeah, you mean Black Adam?
Yeah, Black Adam.
I mean, that was, and I even think at that point, Black Adam would have had to have overperformed for them to change the direction. But I mean, listen, Black Adam had made $1.3 billion. the landscape would look very different today.
Right.
Yeah.
But that would have meant a lot of things that we already learned about the DCU were completely wrong. And it turns out they weren't. Anyway, it's a lot of big question marks surrounding, and can they turn this thing around in 2025? That is, because I'll tell you what, that's going to be a make or break year for Warner Brothers. 2025 is going to be a make or break year because, and I already said, I think Superman Legacy is going to lose money. That's fine. The first one can lose money because it is a rehabilitation program. It's about baby steps, but it's got to be damn good. And if their first couple of films aren't damn good, then they're done. They are done. Warner Brothers are going to get sold off next to McDonald's. There's just going to be nothing left to salvage at that point. All right, guys, listen. We still have like the Mario topic to cover. We still have questions from our YouTube channel members. But before we do, we're going to take a quick minute here and thank the sponsors of today's episode of the John Campea Show podcast, our friends at HelloFresh and my mobile service provider, Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm-fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. And that's why it's America's #1 meal kit. And HelloFresh gets that you want options when it comes to what you make for dinner, not just the same old thing all the time. And that's why they offer 40 recipes to choose from every single week. So you'll never get bored and can always find something new to try and love. And when you need dinner fast, don't just call for delivery. Think of HelloFresh. Their fast and fresh recipes are ready in just 15 minutes or less. Plus, HelloFresh is 25% cheaper than takeout. Ann and I are both working professionals, and so whenever it comes to dinner time, we're always struggling with whether we should get takeout. But with HelloFresh, it makes preparing dinner together fun, easy, delicious, and nutritious. We absolutely can't live without it. So guys, right now, go to HelloFresh.com/Campea50, that's Campea50, and use the promo code Campea50 for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/Campea50 for 50% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. We want to thank a sponsor of this video, Mint Mobile. From the gas pump to the grocery store, your utility bills and favorite streaming services, inflation is everywhere. Seriously, make it stop. Thankfully, there's one company out there that's giving you a much needed break. It's Mint Mobile. As the first company to sell premium wireless service online only, Mint Mobile lets you order from home and save a ton with phone plans starting at just $15 a month. You guys know that ever since I switched to Mint Mobile, I've been saving almost 70% a month over my old phone plan. For people looking for extra savings this year, Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for just $15 a month. By going online only and eliminating the traditional cost of retail, Mint Mobile passes the significant savings on to you. All of their plans come with unlimited talk and text plus high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and keep your same phone number along with all your existing contacts. Switch to Mint Mobile and get premium wireless service starting at just $15 a month. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at HelloFresh and Mint Mobile for sponsoring this episode of the John Campea Show podcast. All right, guys, with that down, let's go into this, shall we? The Super Mario Brothers is the #1 box office film of the year, having made $1.3 billion at the box office. It is already the #1 video game adaptation movie of all time at the box office. It is already the #3 animated box office film of all time, only behind the likes of the Lion King remake and Frozen Part 2. And again, it sits as the #1 box office film of the year and will probably end up being the #1 box office film of the year. I don't think Oppenheimer's going to pass it. I don't think Mission Impossible is going to pass it. I thought maybe Fast X would beat it, but obviously that didn't happen. It's going to end up as the #1 box office film of the year. And now it's coming to streaming. This comes to us from Variety, who writes, "Let's go. The Super Mario Brothers movie is officially making its way to Peacock on August 3rd. The streamer announced on Thursday. Fans will also get treated to bonus content." I love this. Bonus content when the blockbuster animated film arrives on Peacock, including behind-the-scenes interviews with the voice cast, an immersive video field guide, and a lucrative Peaches lyrical video.
Oh, hell yeah.
So this is great. Now listen, I didn't love the Mario Brothers movie. I liked it. It's fun. It's a good nostalgic romp. They did a lot of things right. They did what this movie needed to be, right? But the very fact that we're talking 4 generations of people have been playing Mario Brothers games. And, you know, obviously it was just going to have that appeal, and boom, here we go. Big, huge, massive hit. I can only imagine how good of, or how much it would have made if it was actually like a great movie. But it was pretty good. It was enjoyable. I smiled. I laughed. I enjoyed myself. And now it's coming to Peacock. And boy, if there's a streaming service out there that really needs something like this, it's Peacock. Yep. But they're getting what is the hottest movie of the year so far, going to be on the streaming service and coming next month. But I want to focus for a second on this part of the statement. The statement that says bonus content when the blockbuster comes. Now, I was talking about this earlier on our YouTube channel, but like as a guy who is not a physical media guy, I have been a streaming guy for a decade. I stopped buying physical media discs years and years and years and years ago. The pros of being non-physical media far outweigh the negatives of being a non-physical media guy. But one big drawback for being a streaming guy is lack of bonus material. I love bonus content that comes on physical discs. Love it. And even though there have been a few things here and there, Endgame, for example, Avengers Endgame got released on streaming with bonus content and stuff like that. But that is few and far between. So for me, I love hearing that this thing is going to get released with bonus content, stuff like interviews with the actors, behind the scenes looks, field video guides, all that kind of stuff. And I really hope, now I understand one movie coming out and doing this does not a trend make, but I sure would love it if this could be a little bit of a signal that, hey, movies are starting to recognize the value of having this content. Like, well, yeah, I mean, why would I sit down and watch Super Mario Brothers on the streamer? I already saw it like 2 or 3 times. Oh, you're gonna have all this bonus content on it. Okay. I mean, I just think that's appealing. And listen, bonus content compared to the overall financial structure of making a movie is infinitesimally small. It's not that expensive to make good bonus content compared to the rest of the overall budget of the films. And I really do think it is something that will appeal to and attract viewers. So again, I'm not going to pretend like this is going to be a big deal and it's going to lead to a whole new trend, but I certainly hope it starts a trickle. Anyway, Chris, you hear about the #1 movie of the year, Mario Brothers, coming to Peacock on August 3rd. What do you think about that? And does the bonus content mean much to you?
Oh, I think that'll be fun. I'm excited about the bonus content, especially the immersive field guide. I think that could be really cool, this kind of open world exploration of the different lands that we go to in Mario. That'd be fun. If there is not more content with that little nihilistic star, though.
He'll be your field guide.
I hope so, of him just being like, death looms everywhere. Yeah. I love that guy so much. I'm still angry that there's not more merch of him. But I think this will be really fun because, like you, I loved bonus content on DVDs and everything. I loved listening to director's commentary or seeing bloopers in things. My YouTube algorithm is mostly that. So it's like cooking videos and bloopers. So I think this will be fun. And I do hope it's a trend that other folks do. And I think it would make a lot of these streaming services more enticing to a certain type of movie consumer. You know, those people who really do like to do a deep dives on their favorite movie, which obviously has a big audience.
Which Mario game was it? Was it Super Mario Brothers 3, the one where the first time, I think it was the first game where Mario could get the raccoon tail?
Yeah, that was 3.
Was it 3?
Was that 3?
Yeah.
And like when you play the level, you then go to the wide view of the world and you move between which area of the map we go to. If that becomes their visual field guide, if they don't do that as their visual field guide to the world in which Mario's in, that would be a huge missed opportunity.
They missed a trick then.
Oh, I really hope they do that. All right, guys. With that down, we're going to spend the rest of our time now taking questions from our YouTube channel members. Once again, if you're listening to our podcast, we have a YouTube channel, and on it we have a wonderful group of supporters known as our YouTube channel members, and we ask them every day to submit topics and questions for us to address here on the show, and we get through as many as we can. So, Chris, what do we got up here first? From
Super Padre. Regarding Silo, spoiler alert, the tape was not doing its job?
We can't discuss that. We can't discuss that. So just because, I mean, it just had its finale. I don't know when I just watched it the other day. So I don't think we can go into full things on the finale of the thing yet. So can't talk about it. All right, what's next?
From James Wheeler. Hello, everyone. I also loved Joyride. Amazing movie.
Saw it again last night. The audience we saw it with laughed their asses off. It is such, and you know what the funny thing is? Because the audience we saw it with in San Diego or in Las Vegas laughed so hard, I didn't realize how much I missed. Because again, we were in a 5,000 seat auditorium where everybody was laughing their damn asses off. And so I didn't realize I missed a lot of stuff, like the follow-up lines and things like that. Stuff like, I shop at 99 Ranch. I mean, just things like that. There was so much more to it. It is the comedy of the year. It is so funny. And my wife cried again, even though she saw the movie already. There's a scene near the end where she cries and like, yeah, of course. It is magnificent. It's wonderful. Guys, it opens in theaters everywhere tonight. Go out and see it. Grab a couple of buddies, grab a friend of yours, grab a family member, whatever. Go watch it. Somebody who isn't sensitive to really hard R-rated material. And I'm not talking violence, and go and have a good time. Because
it brings on the filthy.
Oh, yeah, they bring the filthy.
Yeah.
Oh, my God, they bring the filthy.
Yeah.
Yes. What is it? Yeah, it'll totally change your vernacular when you use the term Eiffel Tower. All right, what's next?
From Galaxy Space, John, as a Star Wars fan, does the Dawn of Jedi movie from James Mangold sound like a good idea to you? What direction or era should Star Wars movies focus on, in your opinion? Other crew opinions welcome too. Not sure which of you are Star Wars fans or not. Thanks, John and crew.
Listen, James Mangold directing a Star Wars movie. I mean, it could be Yoda cooks soup for 2 hours, and I'll probably watch it.
I would love that content so much.
Yoda cooks soup.
I am absolutely that demographic where I'd be like, this is soothing.
That chives, you will. That was a terrible Yoda. I'm never going to do that again. So, but I'm not a big fan of looking at the beginnings of something, right? I don't need to know how the Jedi Order started. I just like that the Jedi Order's been around for tens of thousands of years, and they've for generations have been the guardians of peace across the galaxy. That's all I need to know. I didn't fucking need to know about fucking midichlorians.
I was
Fuck
just
you
going
very
to
much.
say that.
Yeah.
It ruins so much of the Jedi mystique.
It ruined so much, period. Like, that was one of the dumbest things.
It's really
Jar Jar was a
stupid.
bad idea. Midichlorians was worse. It's like, oh, it's just a blood test can tell you how strong of a Jedi.
Yeah. You
someone
find out
can
if
be.
you're a Jedi or if you're diabetic. It's a twofer. It's really great.
Am I a Jedi or am I diabetic?
What's going on with me today?
I love that. So I don't really. I mean, that came up before. Like, somebody thought about doing an origin story of Boba Fett. And I said, I don't want to see an origin story of Boba Fett. Some things are better left as mysteries. Sometimes your universe is richer with mysteries. Now, just because it's called Dawn of the Jedi, it might be like in the first 500 years of the Jedi. And it won't be with this one guy saying, wait a minute, I think I just moved that rock with my mind. I'm a Jedi. Like, I don't think necessarily do that, but I don't know. I'm a little bit nervous about it. But again, I trust James Mangold, so we'll see how that goes. All right, what's next?
From Joe Star Gaming, what movie is your most rewatched? Mine is Spider-Verse. I could watch that movie every day.
Most rewatched this year? Or if it's overall, my most rewatched movie is probably Return of the Jedi. I mean, I've probably seen that movie. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say I've watched Return of the Jedi hundreds of times. It's my single all-time favorite movie. And like, when I talk about my favorite movies, I cheat a little bit. Like, I count Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi as one thing. That to me is Star Wars. But if I had to just slice it down, my favorite single movie of all time is I'd say Return of the Jedi. What about you? What movies have you seen more than any others?
Muppet Treasure Island.
Really?
I love Muppet Treasure Island so freaking much.
Oh my, I never would have guessed that.
Yeah, I love it so much. My dad embarrassed me when he met Tim Curry and got his autograph for me because it was, oh my gosh, my daughter's such a huge fan. And he was like, oh, of Rocky Horror? He goes, no, of Muppet Treasure Island. She has the whole thing memorized. And I wasn't even in the room. And it was embarrassing.
Did you know my wife Ann nearly killed Frank Oz?
Why and how dare she?
Yeah,
She's allowed to be on these streets?
we were at one of the Star Wars premieres, and we were in the line going in, and Anne started moving and didn't notice that Frank Oz, who was in a cast and on crutches, like a little bit wobbly in a cast and on crutches right behind her, and she did the whole full force turn to walk thing right into him. And fortunately, somebody was there to steady him so he didn't fall over. And he was very gracious and very kind and very nice.
Good, okay.
And Anne is just like a wee little thing. But yeah, Anne almost killed Frank Oz.
It's like I'm getting visions of like Eric Idle in European Vacation. Oh my God. He's just constantly, getting more and more hurt.
All right, what's
That
next?
was kind of a deep cut. Sorry, guys.
From the Antagonistic Anonymous, a very interesting fact I just learned is that Marvel Studios' Fantastic Four now has the shortest gap between commencement of filming, which is confirmed by Shackman for January of 2024, and Marvel announcing a single cast member for film. No other MCU film has ever had this amount of silence for casting so close to filming. I wonder what factors are delaying the cast announcements, maybe even a delay?
Is that true? We're only in July, August, September, October, November, December, like 6 months away. Really? Cast more than 6 months before the beginning of filming? I'm not refuting it. I'm just saying I have my doubts about that. And you might be right about that. Listen, I have said this for a long time. The Fantastic Four is cast. I believe the movie's cast. Maybe not every single role. Here's the thing. Movies are cast usually long before the announcements are made, right? Like, I believe David Cornsweet has been Superman minimum since May. Like, I don't believe for a second that he didn't already know he was Superman until after May. I don't believe that for a second. So I believe they probably know. Listen, it's also about, you want to use, it didn't used to be this way in the past, but today, like casting announcements, that's a part of the PR, that's a part of the buildup and buzz. And like everything in PR and buzz, it's about timing. It's about timing. When can you get your biggest bump out of that? Maybe they had originally been planning to save it till Comic-Con. That obviously isn't happening. Maybe they'll release it during Comic-Con. Maybe they'll wait till sometime in November or something like that. Maybe the very fact that everybody is still talking about casting in Fantastic Four, they want to keep milking that. I mean, just this week, we had a couple of stories that we talked about. We talked about Adam Driver's situation with Fantastic Four casting. We then talked about Vanessa Kirby. Yeah, Vanessa Kirby, about her potential casting as Sue Storm. Right. This week on our show, we did two big stories talking about Fantastic Four and potential casting. And guess what? Those stories wouldn't have happened if they had announced the cast a few weeks ago. So they understand they're still getting a lot of free publicity, a lot of free PR from this, with everybody speculating and talking. They'll announce it soon enough, but maybe even during Comic-Con. They might even drop a public announcement online during Comic-Con, even though they're not going to be there. So we'll see. All right, what's next?
From Big Cookie. Hey, crew, I watched Parasite last night. I thought it was fun, but didn't really strike me as a Best Picture winner. Would love to hear your opinions on that Oscar race. Bring on the filthy.
I had no problem with Parasite winning Best Picture that year. That was steeped in character, and it was steeped in drama, and it was steeped in dynamics, and it was steeped in relationships. And it was steeped in social commentary, and it was steeped. It's a brilliant movie.
Who else was nominated for Best Picture that year?
Oh, I can't remember.
I'm completely blanking. And I get screeners, so that's embarrassing.
I mean, you look at IMDb, just look up the Academy Awards. Yeah. Actually, let me pull it up here. Let me see. Parasite, IMDb. Let's see. Awards. Yes. So if you look up the awards page, it'll tell you the year. I think it was the 2020 Oscars.
Okay.
That it won. Yeah, because Parasite was a 2019 film, which means it would have won the award at the 2020 Oscars, and I can't get IMDb page to open. So whatever, we'll have to talk about that another time. All right, but yes, I have no problem with it winning. It's
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Joker, Ford v Ferrari, 1917.
Ford v Ferrari, maybe. I could have seen maybe Ford v Ferrari.
Jojo Rabbit, Little Women, Marriage Story.
Yeah.
Parasite's in my opinion, the best movie in there.
Yeah, I might have given it to Ford v Ferrari. 1917 was great. All those movies are great, but yeah, I had no issues with Parasite. That was brilliant filmmaking.
Absolutely.
All right, what's next?
From Ulatan. Hi, gang. Have you seen Guy Ritchie's The Covenant on Amazon Prime? It's a great war flick, which I enjoyed watching. Jake Gyllenhaal and Dar Salim both have very strong performances. Salim reminds me of a younger Tamora Morrison. To me, he stole every scene he was in.
I was late to the party on The Covenant, which is weird because I'm a huge Guy Ritchie fan. I quite enjoyed the film. I didn't love it as much as a lot of people did. I think you're right about the performances. 100% you're right about the performances. It's an emotional, and one of the things I did like about it a lot, it was again, for Guy Ritchie, like Aladdin, it was a very different kind of film for him. And I love seeing how the diverse types of stories that he can tell. Because you would have been forgiven a few years ago to think Guy Ritchie makes one kind of movie. And he does them very well, whether it's Lock, Stock, or Snatch, and Rock and Roller, or things like that. But he's shown with Aladdin, with a movie like this, even Operation Fortune. By the way, Operation Fortune is an underappreciated film. That being said, I didn't love it as much as some people did, but yeah, it was quite solid. All right, what's next?
From the movie Maven. Hey, John and crew. I thought Joyride was great. Joyride was great. I double featured it with The Blackening, which was a lot of fun, but Joyride was next level. It even got me in the feels a couple of times at the end.
Listen, not everything about that film is perfect. It's got a couple flaws, but I'll tell you what, when a comedy can make you laugh the way it makes you laugh and make you feel something, that's a really good and kind of a rare combo. Like, I don't often compare films to 40-Year-Old Virgin. That is my number one all-time favorite comedy. But there's a lot of similarities tonally and things like that, and philosophy, like comedy philosophy, between Joyride and 40-Year-Old Virgin. But at the heart of it is that ability to, number one, the movie makes you laugh hysterically, but then also makes you feel. And yeah, I mean, it's a special film. Have you had a chance to see it again yet since Vegas?
No, because Logan wants to go see it, so I got to coordinate with him.
That's right. Logan didn't go into the watch the screening with us. That's right.
Because if I was seeing something, he couldn't.
You gotta let me know what he thinks about it once he sees it.
Yeah, he's excited about it.
I love that movie. All right, what's next?
From Narelle. Hey, Campea crew. Have you guys seen the Bob Marley One Love trailer? Graphic is Bob Marley. It looks pretty good. Thanks, guys, and have a great day.
We had at Cinema, we were just talking about CinemaCon Las Vegas a few months ago. Ziggy Marley came out on stage to introduce us to this movie. And he talked about, that he's a producer on it as well. And they showed us a preview of it, and they showed us the trailer that is now out, and they did a little bit of a presentation on it. I was expecting more. Like, I'm not big on musician biopics. I'm just not. I think there are more interesting people to do movies and stories about. That being said, there are musical biopics that I do quite enjoy. But if you were going to float a bunch of names to me that could have good potential, Bob Marley's one of them. Bob Marley's like a cultural icon, right? And I don't know. I just found that the trailer, whatever marketing company they hired to make the trailer, whatever trailer house made that trailer, I just feel like they didn't do a great job making it grab your attention. You know what I mean?
Oh,
that I think it had the potential to. So again, the movie may be absolutely brilliant and wonderful. I'm just talking about the trailer. I just didn't think the trailer was all that good. I don't know what you think about it.
The trailer doesn't look as good as its source material.
Yeah.
Which is wild because you have someone so iconic to work with. But yeah, it seemed very typical of a biopic.
Yes, it felt painfully typical. You're right. And I think they could have done much better with it.
Yeah.
But hopefully the movie lives up to its potential.
Hope so.
All right, what's next?
From Amin. Hey, crew. Today's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Turning 25. Oh, you sweet baby. All right. Gonna be celebrating it on the weekend with some DQ Blizzard ice cream cake.
That's actually not bad.
That's really good. What's your favorite movie-related gift that you've ever received? Either for your birthday, Christmas, or something else?
That's a good question.
That's a good, you know what? I might have a better one, but I am a big fan of the movie Fanboys. I really like that movie. And a friend of mine knew I liked the movie and knew Kyle Newman, the director of Fanboys. Now, if you've watched my channel for a period of time, you might say, well, John, you know Kyle. He's been on your show many times. Well, yeah, I know Kyle now, but I didn't know Kyle at the time. And a friend of mine did know Kyle and got a big, giant framed Fanboys poster and got Kyle to autograph it and sent it over to me. Aww. And that was a pretty awesome wild. The other one is this iconic, legendary Hollywood costume designer, Marilyn Vance, I should say, who just is this executive producer of the Designing Hollywood show on our channel here. She was the designer of one of my unsung favorite movies ever, which is Mystery Men. A movie which contains one of my all-time favorite characters, Captain Amazing. Marilyn designed the Captain Amazing costume. And I did not know at the time, but she watches our show. And I did not know that. So through a mutual friend, she dug through her archives and found the first concept drawing she did of what Captain Amazing will look like in this Mystery Men movie, what his costume will look like. And she put it together, autographed it, and sent it over to me. Those are my two favorite movie-related gifts I've ever gotten. Ray just got his and just gave him some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. Yeah. You got that here? Oh yeah, there it is.
There it is. I was in the process of opening them up.
And it's the new one for the new movie.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, Ann got that for him. All right, what's next?
From CJ Rebirth, I'm looking forward to Oppenheimer, but my excitement is more towards Barbie because what I've seen so far is giving me vibes of the first Lego movie.
Oh, I thought you mean Barbie. I thought you meant Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer's giving
I'm
Lego
definitely
vibes?
getting that from Oppenheimer.
Yeah, Oppenheimer's giving you that sense.
It definitely
huh?
has an everything is awesome vibe to it, you know?
Yeah.
And then not.
Yeah. Here, I'll bring this over here for a second. Like, look, you guys know that I don't go to press stuff anymore. But even though I've told all the studios to take me off their press list, I still get the invites. I'll tell you, every once in a while, I get one that is real damn tempting. Universal just sent me my invite to go watch Oppenheimer. And I'm not going to go because I no longer go to any press stuff.
And he's not going to send Jonathan.
Nope.
And he doesn't ever forward him over to Jonathan.
It's non-transferable.
Even though I
We've had
do
this
a
discussion.
flawless John Campea impression.
I'll just go yell, just dress like you.
I'm John Campea.
I am the John Campea. As I walk through.
I'm the John Campea. I'm from Canada. So Surrey. So sorry.
Go hockey.
Sorry. Yes. What do you?
I'll tell you what, though, every once in a while, and one of these invites comes through that I'd be like, again, I don't go to the press stuff anymore, but if I were going to break the rule, that's one of the ones that would be very tempting for me to break the rule for. But I'm not going to go. But
Yeah.
I cannot wait to see it. Listen, Barbie is a film to me that had zero interest from me until CinemaCon. They showed us their full presentation of it. I'm like, this movie is so much more than I thought it was going to be. I am also very excited for Barbie, but come on, man. Christopher Nolan with a true story, like historical biopic sort of thing. I can't wait. This is literally something that changed the world and is still like we live in the world because of the events of this movie. I just cannot wait for it, man. All right, time for two more. What's next?
From Dildar. What was the most boring movie you saw in theaters? For me, it was Huntsman, Winter's War.
Ooh.
I was bored to tears that so much so that I started falling asleep in the theater. That never usually happens. Never again for me.
Huntsman Winters. Yeah, that was a bad.
That one's
movie.
rough.
That was a bad movie. For me, it might not the worst movie I've ever seen, but most boring. It might have to be the Michael Fassbender film Light Between Oceans. That's a grueling movie to get through because it's awful and it's boring. I hated that movie. What happened to Michael Fassbender? Like, he's, I think, one of the great actors we have of our generation.
He was
But
the chosen one.
He's got representation that just started picking awful. Remember that one he did? I think it was called The Iceman or The Snowman?
Oh yeah.
That
Vaguely,
murder mystery where he's a
vaguely.
detective.
Oh my god.
Oh my God, that was one of the worst. It tried to be, Along Came a Spider, Kiss the Girl. He tried to be one of those like detective murder mystery sort of things. Oh my God, it was so bad. And he just did this big succession of these types of really terrible films that just kind of made him drop off the thing, which is too bad because it had nothing to do with his talent. It just had to do with his representation, picking movies for him. Terrible stuff. All right, last question of the day. What's next?
From Cody Hunt. Saw Joyride last night. Best comedy in the past decade. My audience loved it. Some of the biggest laughs I've ever heard.
I don't think you're wrong when you say it's the funniest comedy of the last decade. Like when, Ray, look this up quick. When did Hangover come out? Because I remember the first time I saw Hangover. I mean,
So
I
it
was
like
not
2014. I feel like it's
2009.
wow.
Hangover's 2009. So yeah,
not 2014.
You know what? I will join you on that. I will join you that this is the funniest movie of the decade. I can't think of a movie that made me just straight up laugh as hard and as often as this movie did. And listen, I want to be very careful because, I say this before, but I'll say it again. Nothing is as subjective in movies as humor, right? Like one joke can make 3 people laugh hysterically and 3 other people go, that's not funny, right? It's just, that's the thing. And just because I laughed at it that hard doesn't necessarily mean you will. I can only tell you my experience. To me, I will go along with you. This is the funniest movie of the decade. I think, I don't know. That's a grand statement to make, Chris, but you've seen the movie. Do you think it at least deserves to be in the conversation?
It definitely deserves to be in the conversation. It's so freaking funny. I mean, I was cry laughing at certain things. And to have that happen where, because I ran to the front and I found like a little aisle area for myself because I had to pee constantly at CinemaCon. So I didn't want to sit in between everyone. To be laughing so hard and crying by yourself in a movie is a really profound thing. And then to openly weep at some other moments too after scream laughing. I mean, this movie just runs the emotional gamut.
Yeah. Look, the overall message is, go see Joyride. It's not going to do well at the box office. Like they've had practically a non-existent marketing budget for this movie. It's a small little low budget film. They debuted it at South by Southwest. Seth Rogen is a producer on it, but they have not done a lot to market it. Again, it's from Lionsgate. They don't have a ton of money to market their projects, but believe me that you are going to have a good time at the movie theaters if you go. I think you're going to have a blast. And guys, with that, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show podcast. Thank you so much for being here and making this show part of your day. Big special thank you to our channel members for sending in those topics and questions. Number 1, because you're our channel members and you're being supportive of us. So thank you. But number 2, you gave us great fun things to talk about and we appreciate it very much. I want to thank the people sitting in the room with me. We got Ray Orr over here, Jonathan Voico.
See ya.
Chris Carr's here.
Bye.
Guys, don't forget, if you are taking in this podcast on our YouTube channel, the best experience with the John Campea Show podcast is in the form of a podcast. Go and find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Just search for the John Campea Show podcast and subscribe to it today. That'll do it for us for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.